Hi, I'm Chad Emerson, and this is the official Huntsville City FC podcast.
This is Clark Dunn of Beyond Rockets, and we are honored to be the official producers for the HCFC podcast. You can find out more information about our work by visiting our website, beyondrockets.com today.
Hi, everyone. Chad Emerson, Huntsville City Football Club Behind the Scenes podcast. We're back with a great interview with the city administrator of the city of Huntsville, John Hamilton. John, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So the city administrator is a title, but you wear a lot of sporting hats. Tell us about the Sports Commission and Parks and Rec and how the Huntsville sports scene works together.
Sure. So, in that position, I get to supervise a number of departments. One of them is Parks and Recreation, and I'm also on the Sports Commission, so involved in kind of all of the city's infrastructure and recreation programs, but then also the sports tourism side and, just growing sports in general in Huntsville through the Sports Commission.
So travel soccer is one of those sports that can be pretty lucrative in terms of lodging tax, sales tax for a city. Tell us about since you've started in 2013, right? Mm-hmm. Since you started in 2013, what have been some of the priorities to upgrade the soccer facilities in the city of Huntsville?
Yeah, so, we've got great local clubs and they work to bring in tournaments and things. So looking at it from a tourism and a city revenue standpoint, some of those youth soccer tournaments may have 90, 100 plus, teams in it, and they're all staying for multiple nights and bringing families. And also it's great for our community, great for local restaurants and hotels and things. So we'd love to see that component of our tourism be viable and continue to grow. What I found coming into 2013 and probably had been in existence for a while is just as soccer had grown so rapidly, which happened all across America, and so Huntsville is no exception to that, but the city really had not kept up with the physical infrastructure that it took to really enable that growth. So we have spent a lot of time trying to build soccer fields, and not just more quantity, but also improve the conditions. There's a number of fields around that are just in such poor condition you can't get much use out of them, ones that don't have the proper drainage, so if it rains, they're down for several days. And so really working on a mixture of both natural grass and artificial turf fields across our inventory, but all of them improving in a way where we can get more use out of them.
So as we're recording this, we're just a day away from another edition of the state high school championships, the AHSAA. So we'll be past it by the time we get posted, but
sure.
That's an event that's really been a soccer beacon for a long, long time in North Alabama, right?
It has, absolutely, and it's growing. So, as soccer has grown in Alabama, they're starting to create more of the categories where they might have had in the past, 3 and 4A combined. Now they're split apart. I'm just using that as an example. But so we're actually I guess it started last year, an additional day in the tournament because they have additional teams that are coming, and so that's been good for us. And it's one of those things. It's 4 teams per classification, both boys and girls. So anytime that grows, that's great. But it's also a little bit of just introducing people to our community from around the state, and then I think that you leverage that into other bigger tournaments and stuff. People are more comfortable coming to Huntsville. They're familiar with our facilities, and as we make those improvements, I think it's one of those kind of crown jewels in our list of sporting events that we bring to the community.
So speaking of facilities, we're here at Wicks Family Field at Joe Davis Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
May not look like it, but we're in the referee locker room.
Yep.
Probably the nicer referee locker room. We'll talk about that. But before we talk about HCFC coming to town, let's talk about this facility because, the former Joe Davis Stadium almost died and got tore down about 15 times. It seems like it's like one of those cats with multiple lives. How did it end up? What was the path from the Stars left to go down to Biloxi to be the Shuckers to now it's one of the premier 5,000 seat or so middle-sized stadiums in America?
Mm-hmm. So, we had a number of folks, come in after the Stars left in 2016, and, that last game was played, but people came in with proposals on things to do with the site. And the ones that were more serious, obviously none of them came to fruition, but the ones that were more serious and more viable all involved tearing down the stadium. And so we kind of assumed that at some point Joe Davis Stadium probably gets demolished and something built in its place. But we also made the decision to not touch it until we were certain that it was really going to move forward in that direction. And so, it sat for several years until we really started looking hard at high school football. So we've got 5 high schools in Huntsville, and they were all sharing one stadium, Milton Frank Stadium, owned by the school system. They were occasionally able to use A&M Stadium, which was helpful, but still even 2 stadiums on those weekends when A&M's was available was not enough for 5 high schools oftentimes. And so we really said, all right, we've got to find a way to help our school system and get a 3rd football stadium. But we always knew that professional soccer here was a really good possibility. And we had other leagues before, MLS Next Pro even existed. Other professional leagues had talked to us about potentially citing a team here. So while our initial motivation was all about high school football, from day one, we said it's going to be a multi-use stadium. We are going to build it in a way where it has what it needs for high school football and professional soccer, and rugby and lacrosse and anything else that fits on a rectangular stadium or a rectangular field. So that was always our approach. In fact, when we first had our initial design meetings, we went and got the USL design standards for a stadium, and we used that to inform the architect of things to consider for professional soccer. Then in the middle of that, Next Pro came into existence. We knew that really Next Pro was a direction that we preferred to go as a community. Fortunately, we were able to build a great relationship with the Nashville Soccer Club and their leadership. And then, we were off and running in that direction. And so then once that decision was made, then we had, people from Nashville Soccer Club who kind of helped inform some of the things that we need to do to finish up design and provide basically consultancy during construction. So
one of the coolest things is this is the 40th anniversary of Joe Davis Stadium this year. It was in April. There's still a fair number of people, including the police chief's wife, Cindy Giles, who was in the ticket window when it first opened. Yeah. And they talk about how they had these memories, and then it went into disrepair, and they could hardly drive by it on the parkway without feeling sad. And they come back in, and what's from the original Joe Davis Stadium still part of the stadium?
So, it was a kind of an oddly shaped stadium where, on the south end, it started basically around where first base would be, and wrapped all the way around, all the way down the third baseline. It actually had a little bit of stands, almost kind of a little bit of a curly cue around the third baseline foul pole. Those last 2 sections that were at the third base foul poles got torn down, and that's where the beer garden now exists. But all the rest of the stands are still in existence as they were. Now, we replaced the seating, but the actual configuration of the stands is largely the same. We did have to remove kind of the lower 2 or 3 rows just because we needed to raise the field level and things. So you lost kind of those rows so that were right down at field level in the baseball configuration. But the grandstands, as you knew them then, are still in existence except for that little piece that we tore down. The player tunnels came in where the dugouts were, and those are still the player tunnels that soccer players use today. And they go up to where the locker rooms were. So a little bit different.
Yeah.
Typically you see, particularly in international soccer, you see the teams share the same tunnel out of their locker rooms and come out on the field together. And, because of the way we had to configure this, that doesn't work. But, whenever you have an HCFC match, the away team just comes down the sideline and joins. And so you still get to go through those kind of soccer traditions there, starting at the sideline. So, but those tunnels and most of the locker room footprint is still the same. Some of the concession stands are still the same. Certainly went in and modernized equipment and, plumbing, electrical, those things like that. Modernized the restrooms. Most of the restrooms are still the original ones. So if you were in Joe Davis 40 years ago or 30 years ago, I was, when I first came to the community back in 2010, the Stars were still here and came to some games. And so if you're one of those old timers, you'll still recognize Joe Davis Stadium.
Great. Yeah, in fact, ironically, the one sport you can't play here anymore is baseball. Right. You can play wiffle ball maybe, but so now the former press box is the Keel Point Club, the premium area, and so why did the press box have to be moved?
Well, because, it was in that location because you typically want to put the press behind home plate.
Yep.
So that what is a southwestern corner of the field was where home plate was. And so that, now the luxury box was the old press box aligned with home plate. But you really needed to have press and coaches boxes, things like that, aligned with midfield.
Yeah.
And that's particularly true for football, but it also is helpful for soccer as well. Obviously football has a larger load of coaches and things like that during a game up there, up at that kind of elevation, but they really want to be aligned with midfield. So what were luxury boxes back then for baseball turned into the press box and coaches boxes, and what was the press box turned into the luxury box for soccer. So it's but those buildings are basically the same as they were then.
Yeah. So as we wrap things up here, this is John Hamilton, City Administrator for the City of Huntsville and one of the real visionaries behind the revitalization of Wicks Family Field at Joe Davis Stadium. But you have a beautiful new stadium without a tenant. So
That's right.
tell us how, and obviously I know the story, but tell us for our listeners, our watchers, people on YouTube, how did Huntsville City Football Club, Nashville Soccer Club get connected with the city of Huntsville and ultimately become partners at Wicks Family Field?
Well, quite frankly, you and your role prior to coming to the club were involved in that, just making some introductions and stuff. And as the Nashville Soccer Club leadership, as they were envisioning how they introduced their next pro team, with the conversations here with us and some of the connections that you helped make and the relationship we started building with the mayor and John Ingram and the leadership team there, they just really decided that they wanted to do a different model where most of the other MLS teams, almost basically all the other MLS teams, have just kept their next pro team inside the same metro area as their Division I team. Nashville said, let's try something a little bit different. Let's have a next pro team that has its own branding, has its own identity, has its own city, close enough where you still get the value of being able to share players as is intended, which really, the player development is obviously one of the primary reasons for the team to exist, but also do it in a way where it can stand alone. And so Huntsville geographically is a great fit for Nashville. I think culturally is a great fit. As part of the city's leadership team, I think the relationships we built with Nashville's leadership team was very, very valuable, and it's been a great working relationship in getting this team built. It doesn't happen without partnership. I don't think there's any way Nashville Soccer Club could come down here and on their own build a team, nor could the city make it happen by itself either. It takes us together, really holding hands, walking through that process. And it's been great. And I think that, what some people at the leadership at the league level call the Huntsville model is certainly something that I would advocate for as a soccer fan. I would like to see MLS have more teams like this. I think ultimately it's going to help grow the game better than having the next pro team just buried inside the same city with with their primary team. So.
Yeah. Speaking as a fan, you weren't the first season ticket holder. That was Mayor Tommy Battle.
Yeah.
You're one of probably the top first 10 or so.
Probably so. Yeah.
Did you ever expect to be a season ticket holder for a professional soccer team?
Well, once we recognized that at some point we would have a professional soccer team, I fully intended to support it.
I'm talking about years ago, because you grew up playing soccer.
Probably not. No, yeah. I played a little bit of soccer when I was a kid, but probably never really envisioned being in this kind of role and being involved in it in this way. So it's been fun and exciting.
I think one of the greatest accomplishments of Huntsville City Football Club is that Mrs. Hamilton likes to come to soccer games now a little bit.
Sometimes.
That's I was like, we get people who have no interest in soccer but love the experience. Talk about what a match day experience. If you don't know what offsides or yellow card is, what makes it interesting?
Well, so first off, I think watching it in such a very close, kind of intimate environment is helpful. And, where we got our seats, I purposely, got near midfield and up high enough where you can really watch the way plays develop and things. I'm a big fan of the geometry of the game. I know you like being down in the, right in the action, and you tried to push me to get on the front row, and I want to be up high so I can see, plays develop.
Doug Martinson seats.
That's right, yeah. But I love watching that, just the geometry and watching the passing and the ball control and things is very interesting to me. One of the great things is it's just people are there to have fun and have a good time. And, so many times, I bring people who don't really understand the game, and so I'm explaining stuff as stuff is happening, and which is, some of the case with my wife, but also people around us. I mean, the people with the season tickets directly behind me, the guy used to be a soccer coach at the high school level, and so he's constantly explaining things. And in fact, the mayor, who doesn't have as much history with soccer, will turn to him and say, "Why is that happening?" And the guy will explain it to him. So everybody's just like that. They're just there to have a good time and get to know each other, and it's just a fun environment.
What's your favorite HCFC soccer memory in our first 3 years of existence? Is there a game or a goal or something else?
When we scored a goal within the first 10 seconds of the match, that was pretty, that was good, because that took some planning. That took the other team to, allow it to happen. Obviously, it was unexpected. I mean, just that ambush happening so quickly and just completely changes the complexion of the match for literally the entire 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It was pretty interesting.
I think if I'm not remembering wrong, it might have been Ali Wright kicking off to Johnny Bolaños, who
Yeah, and the fact that it was then my favorite player, Bolaños.
Yeah.
I always when you talk about the geometry of the game, his speed when he was healthy. I understand he ran into some injury problems that changed us a little bit towards the end of his time here, but his speed completely changed the shape of the defense.
Yeah.
And you'd see the teams that just couldn't handle it. And so there were a lot of times either he scored because of it or he allowed somebody else to score because the defense had to wait so much in his direction. So it was always fun to watch him play.
Have you found, since becoming a fan of HCFC, that you become a fan of soccer in general more? Or are you just a hometown fan guy?
No. I've always been a fan of soccer, but it's connected me more to the game, and so I'm paying a little bit more attention. It's also now, just because soccer's become more popular across America, now you have access to more of the leagues around the country on television. So I love to get up on a Saturday or Sunday morning and watch some EPL, and I just see that top level. It's nice having such easy access to some of those teams now. So
it doesn't hurt that FSU has a really strong women's team too.
That's right. Yeah,
it's your alma mater.
That's right. We are definitely a football club, but the round football.
Yeah.
So.
All right, that's John Hamilton, City Administrator, City of Huntsville. We're going to wrap things up with a segment we call our top three.
Okay.
You answer your top in each of these categories. I get a little information about the behind the person. Top soccer club in the world.
So I'm going to kind of give you two answers to this. Obviously, Liverpool is having a season that's just absolutely incredible. But I think when I think of the top club, I'm trying to think across a longer period of time than just a single season. And I'm still partial to Man City. So I think they're positioned to continue to be very successful for a while.
Okay. Top national team in the world.
The U.S. women's team.
Oh, okay. Good answer.
If you say, okay, no men, then I would say Argentina.
Argentina, next year, 2026, here in the States?
We'll see.
Okay. And top sandwich that John Hamilton, if he had one more sandwich to eat, what sandwich would John Hamilton be eating?
So, there's a debate. Are hamburgers the way we eat them in America sandwiches? I would say they are, and I haven't found anybody who can top Five Guys.
Five Guys burger?
Five Guys burger. Yeah, get the bacon cheeseburger. I'll do that all day.
All right, there's another sponsor we need to get down the show there. All right, that's John Hamilton. John, thanks for all you do for not just the community, but for the soccer community in particular. Thanks for joining us on the pod.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We'll be back next time with another guest on the HCFC Behind the Scenes podcast. Thanks for joining us.